Hi, thanks for joining me. I'm going to do some tech tidbits with you. My name is Angie Kaltoff. I'm the tech integrationist for the St. Cloud Area School District. And all the things that I say in this screen recording are my opinions. They're not coming from the school district. So your teacher gave me a list of questions that you guys had, and I tried to get as many as I could involved in the screen recording. But if I would have answered all, we would be here for a while. So a little bit about myself. I used to teach English to kindergarten students who were new to the country in our Jumpstart program. I live in central Minnesota. I like to teach kindergarten summer school as much as possible now that I'm the integrationist. I don't have a classroom anymore, but my job is to work with teachers using technology in their classrooms. I'm a Google certified teacher, and that means that a few years ago I got to go to a Google Teacher Academy at Mountain View, California at the Googleplex, and got to do all things googly for a few days. In my spare time, I like to go to conferences, or in the summer, I like to wakeboard and surf and be on the water as much as possible. And during the year, or throughout the whole year, I like to go to the CrossFit gym and do some Olympic lifting, but I'm still a newbie at all of that. I'm married and I have one sister. So here's the first question. As a teacher, do we need to be the ones to introduce the basics of computers or iPads, or do they come into the school already knowing these? So thinking about our students, we need to think about their background, and knowing that all of them come from a different background, it's great if you can teach some digital citizenship no matter what age they're at. And Common Sense Media has some great resources that you can use in your classrooms, whether you're working with kids who are in primary school or through high school. I think it's important to set the standards and help kids understand what happens out there. Not all students have a family at home to help them understand how to behave properly online. So that's one that I like to stress is digital citizenship, and I don't think it's too early to start in our kindergarten classrooms. Another thing to think of is this, what you would like your students to do. So if you're asking them to show you what they know via a presentation, like Google presentation, for example, if they've never used it before, just a little overview is great. You don't have to be the expert. A lot of the times the kids will pick up on it pretty fast, and then they can help you. That's a lot of the times what I hear from teachers is, I didn't know what we were doing with the iMovie or the Yak It Kids, but the kids figured it out. So if you have some knowledge and you can help them understand how to use the tool itself, great, but you don't always have to. I do think it's important to help kids be successful, so not to set them up for failure. So if it's a new project or a new tool, to slowly introduce them to it is great, and maybe just set a few guidelines, unless you really know the tool and you know exactly what you want from them. The next question is, does technology take away from showing the work that needs to be shown? And this is something that I actually did with your teacher. Using a program like Explain Everything or EduCreations is a great way for kids to show you what they know. So here's an example from the class.
Hi. So 4 times 7 equals 28. So I put the 8 on here and put the 2 up here.
Let's fast forward a little bit.
So 2. So 7 times 2 equals 14. Put the 4 down here. 4 plus 4 equals 8. So I'm going to do 20.
So that was an example of EduCreations, and you can have a free EduCreations account as a teacher, and your students can do one video at a time. Otherwise, this app right here is called Explain Everything, and it's a one-time fee in the App Store. I think it's about $3, and it downloads to your iPad. This app works without the internet, so if you are in a school district that's getting iPads and the kids are taking them home, but not all of your students have access to the internet at home, this might be a great tool for you to have on the iPads. I think both apps are great in different situations. Another way for kids to show their work or what they're thinking is with visual note-taking. If you Google visual note-taking, or if you go on Twitter and you look at it, this is an example from Sylvia's Flickr page of different things she's done with visual note-taking, and I think she has some really great resources out there for you to look at if you're not familiar with it. Which form of technology do you prefer in the classroom? If one gets a choice between an iPad and a Chromebook. So this is the great debate, iPad or Chromebook. What one is better? Which one should we get? My opinion, they both are great. It depends on what you want to do. So for example, with this project, it would involve both an iPad and a Chromebook. I think it's easier to create QR codes on a Chromebook or on a desktop computer, but it's easier to read them on an iPad. So if this is an example of a word wall, and the students would use their iPad to scan the QR code, and then it reads the word that's next to it. Here's an example of, it's called Pic Collage. It's an app on your iPad. It really easily works with your camera roll. So you can take a picture of something and then the kids can label the different parts of the picture. So we did this in summer school last year with kindergarten, and they used their vocabulary words to label different parts of the habitat we were learning about. So in this situation, the iPad works great. In this example, you would want access to a computer or a Chromebook because it does not work on the iPad. So this is using augmented reality. In this example, you could use either an iPad or a computer using Google Slides, but on a computer or on your Chromebook, you have more access to different tools within Google Slides itself. You have more format and functions than on your iPad. In this example, you would want an iPad. This is using Color Mix AR. It's augmented reality, and it helps the picture on the piece of paper come to life. It makes it 3D, and so you can interact with it. So here's the next question. The school I hope to teach at has Promethean boards in every classroom, and teachers all have access to a classroom iPad. I've heard there are many exciting ways the two can be used together to enhance classroom curriculum, but have yet to see this in action. Have you had the chance to use these tools at all in the classroom? If so, what are some helpful ways you have used them to benefit your kids? So, in my classroom experience, I have used both Promethean and smartboards, but the tools I'm going to share with you interact with them. It doesn't matter which one you're using. But just a heads up is, in my opinion, I think smartboards and Promethean boards will start going away and we'll have more interactive TVs. The office that I work in, we just recently got rid of our smartboard and we have 2 smart TVs in there with Apple TV, so we can project our devices onto the TVs instead of being connected to the computer to the smartboard. So in this example, a teacher is using her iPad to teach a lesson, and all of the tools that I have found are either your iPad or your device being projected onto a smartboard or TV, but it's not interactive on the board itself. You have to touch the iPad, or it's the opposite. Your iPad screen becomes your computer screen, and you can control your computer on your iPad. So here are some tools that you can use. This first one here is Reflector by Air Squirrels, and this one is Air Server, and they do the same thing. They're just different tools that work with different types of operating systems. They will take the screen of your iPad and they'll project it onto your computer, which you can then project onto your smartboard. They're really reasonable in price. It's a fee that you pay to download the license onto your computer. And I would say they're probably around $10 a piece, or if you get a bunch at one time, they're even cheaper. Another tool that works like that is Apple TV, but that is a little bit more expensive. This top one up here is Nearpod, and it lets you as the teacher control the devices the students have in front of them. So if you have a presentation, you can control what page they're on, and you can turn the page on your device and it turns the page on all of their devices. You can also build in some formative assessment questions and get the answers right away on your device. It's a pretty neat tool. They have a free version and a paid version. I've used the free version for the majority of the time, and I think it does a lot of things that I would like it to do. The paid version has some awesome extra features, but in my opinion, they're not always needed. The one down here, this is an example or a picture of Splash Top Whiteboard, which does what I was talking about before, where it makes your iPad control your computer. So you can open up your computer screen up on your iPad, and anything you do on your iPad is what you would be doing on your computer. So like opening Microsoft Word or opening your district's H drive. So it does the opposite of what air server and reflector do. Another thing that you can use is if your district purchases Casper, it's a way to manage your iPads. Casper has a program called Casper Focus, which lets you as the teacher put kids into certain apps and lock them into it. So if you want them all working on Google Drive and writing a paper, you can lock them into that app so that they can't get out of Google Drive and go mess around in something else. So those are a few different programs that you can use to interact your smartboard, your teacher device, and your Promethean board and the kids' devices. Next question. My mentor teacher has been teaching for over 42 years and is still a phenomenal teacher. Her students love her, parents love her, staff loves her. She is somehow still at the top of her game. That said, she has not embraced technology. She doesn't have her students use the iPads like the other teachers do because she says that she feels that children have plenty of exposure to that type of thing at home. Instead, she uses hands-on games and activities to reinforce her lessons. I know that my mentor feels that children end up wasting time finding which game to play or trying to figure it out and then moving on to the next game. She feels that their time is better used on the math games that have been around for years. I can see her point, but I wonder sometimes if her students are missing out by not having the time with technological tools for learning that so many others have. I wonder what your thoughts are about this. So there's this philosophy called the SAMR model, and it basically helps you understand how to take technology into your lessons and redefine your classroom to help transform your teaching. So thinking of skills that you're doing right now without the use of an iPad or a Chromebook, and then what you can do with an iPad or a Chromebook. So substitution is at the lowest level, where you're basically taking a piece of paper that you would take notes on with a pencil, and then you're doing the same thing on the iPad. You're not changing anything. And then it moves to augmentation, through modification, to redefinition. So you're redefining what you used to do in your classroom. You wouldn't have been able to do this without that piece of technology. I think that teacher might be stuck in the substitution level, and it maybe isn't thinking outside of it. Yes, there are games that kids can play hands-on, and I think that's great. I don't think the iPad should replace everything. But what about games that the kids could play on an iPad that give them instant feedback, that give them the correct answer right away? Or thinking of things like number sense, having kids create a video about the number 5, showing you 5 things, counting to 5, explaining what they're thinking. Different things that kids can do with technology that they wouldn't be able to do without it. So if you Google the SAMR model, there's tons of information out there about it, and this is where I usually start when I'm working with teachers who are having a hard time making that switch. So here's an example. Without this piece of technology, kids wouldn't be able to make an actual movie. They could have that playtime in the classroom, which I think is great. But now they can create a movie and they can share it with the world. They can publish it so that their parents can see it and their families. One thing to think about with this is that student privacy and making sure you have permission to post their pictures online before you actually do it. Next question. How old do you think a student needs to be to do all assignments on an iPad or a computer? Do you even recommend doing all assignments on these items? I think it's very important to have a balance. I think that you need to do what is best for the students. So if it's not best for them to do everything on an iPad, don't do everything on an iPad. Thinking about young students and fine motor skills, I think it's still very important for them to hold a pencil and practice writing. I think it's important for kids to have time to play and be social with one another. But I also think there is a time and a place for them to have an iPad or a piece of technology. For example, here is an app, it's called Word Wizard, and it tells the kids the sound of the letter as they drag it up, and then it will read the word to them. So I'm thinking back to my kindergarten classroom and the magnets I had on cookie sheets. The kids would write the word cat, they'd bring up the letters, and then they would be the judge of themselves, thinking, oh, I spelled that word right, cat, C-A-M, or with their friends, they were playing games, and they would have arguments over how the word was spelled, if it was correct or not. Or something like this, if it's done on an iPad, they get that immediate feedback, and then they can hear the word cat. When we first started using this app, a teacher said that her student was trying to read a book from the library, and there was a word she didn't know. So she pulled out her iPad, and used this app to spell the word, and it read it to her, and then she kept on reading. So that was a skill that she acquired all by herself. The teacher didn't tell them that's something that they had to do, but she figured it out and did it that way. Sometimes I use the iPad with writing. So this is a kindergarten classroom, and this app was helping them spell words. So on the iPad, they dragged their finger over letters, they made a word, and it read the word to them. And then I would have them transfer that knowledge onto this piece of paper. So then when they would go home, they would have that piece of paper, and their families could ask them what they did today, and then they could explain to them. Other times we have them pre-plan. So this was a little girl. She pre-planned what she was going to make on the iPad. So we did a story at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then on the iPad, she took pictures and made pictures and then made a little video about it. So before she got to the iPad, she had to do the pre-work. What age is a good age to expect students to work independently on a computer? So I taught kindergarten, and I think it works great in kindergarten. I think it works even great in preschool. It depends on how you set it up in your classroom. So to have those classroom management skills and set the expectation with the students ahead of time is key. Sometimes I think it's better to do things without the iPad or Chromebook, but sometimes I think there is a place for it. So for example, here's how I did it in my classroom. The iPad or Chromebook, but sometimes I think there is a place for it. So for example, here's how I did it in my classroom. I created these little things down here, we called them pictos, kind of like how the special ed teacher would have pictos for students' schedules. We did that with iPads in the classroom. So we had an app menu where we would put these pictures on and say, okay, today is reading, so you can pick from these 4 reading apps. So this helped me plan out what the students were going to do while giving them some choice. So they had their independence because they were at a station alone doing this, yet I knew what they were working on and that it was meeting the goals for the day. Whenever I would introduce a new app to my class, I would be in the group the very first time they used it, and I would model how it should be used. Then the following days, they were either independently using it or they were using it with like a college helper or a paraprofessional. When I was working on my master's, part of what I researched was engagement and how much time students were engaged and how that affected their reading and speaking. And I found that research showed that they should be able to focus, be engaged on something for their age plus 2 minutes, but using technology, it was well above that. If you want to print this app menu, you can find it on our Teachers Pay Teachers page. We're the techie teachers, and I think I mentioned it at the very beginning. So here's an example of the kids using the app menu and the pictos. So this was at their guided reading time. These are the apps with the skills that we wanted them to focus on for that time, and they're independently doing it. However, all of those apps we had already used because I think it's important the first time you use an app to show the students how you would like them to use it to help them with their learning. How do you go about setting up a Google Classroom? So this is a little more tech and step specific, but you need to go to classroom.google.com and you have to have a school Google account. If you try to do it with a personal account, it won't work. Then you as a teacher can create a class, and then your students can be added via a code, or you can directly add them. There's a lot more we could go into with this, but I hope that helps you get started with it. But Google Classroom is one of many learning management systems, and in St. Cloud we use Schoology for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, but our younger teachers use either Edmodo or Schoology, and our older high school teachers are looking at Google Classroom. So we kind of have a big mix, but the goal would be to have everyone on one learning management system. But one thing that our teachers can do in Schoology is have students create things in Notability, which is this app down here. It's a note-taking app where you can record and you can highlight, you can write, you can type. You can do a lot of great things in it. And then they can upload it to Schoology. Notability and Schoology both work well with the Google account, your Google Apps for Education. So I made this little graphic here showing how they all play well together. So those are the main questions that I kind of saw repeated in your form from your teacher. So here are a few extra little tidbits. When I created this presentation, I used a Google presentation or Google Slides, and within it you can get pictures that have copyright permission to be reused. So inside of the Google presentation or slides itself, if you go to Tools and then Research, this little research thing appears on the side, and you can pick your usage rights. And then it will link the picture that you're using back to the website. So some of those pictures I took myself, but some of them were used online. And this is available for students and their Google accounts. It also works in Google Docs. Also, connect with other teachers. So EdCamp Mid-Min is a EdCamp. It's an unconference, and we're bringing it to the St. Cloud State iSelf building on June 10th. It's free to any educator, and we hope to get up to 250 teachers there. We're excited because it's a day of learning, and it's a very participatory day, so you get out of it what you put into it. There aren't scheduled speakers. We have scheduled time slots, but then participants get to propose topics that are important to them that they want to talk about. So it's a great day for learning, and I invite you all to come and spread the word to get as many teachers there as we can get. The website is right here, and so you can visit this to find more information or to register. This is where I go when I have questions or when I want to share things with other people, and I think it's important to be a connected educator and have that personal learning network. So on Twitter, I'm at Mrs. Kultoff. Google+, if you search Angie Kultoff, you'll find a couple different accounts for me, but you can follow any of them, but the one with this picture right now is probably the one I use the most. Then when I find information that I like and want to keep, I put it on Flipboard. Flipboard is a way for you to organize things online. You can create different magazines and put things in them. And then you can keep them public or private. So most of mine I have as public, so anything that I'm putting to a Flipboard you can see too, and you can follow my boards or you can follow other people's boards. So those are the 3 places that I go every day to keep up with my personal learning network. Here are some more resources. So if you're just getting started, check these places out. Dr. Mark Wellness is a great place to go get some tips on how to help your kids have good ergonomics while they're using devices to help kind of fight that neck pain and back pain, or getting them to start thinking about how to sit properly at a young age so that just becomes habit. My blog is on there. I don't update it as much as I would like to, but that's one way you can get a hold of me. The Techie Teachers blog is the one that I've referenced a few times today. It's a great blog for primary teachers. We've blogged about apps that we use in our classrooms. Shake Up Learning is great for any educator. She has tons of great resources for you to use when you're learning how to use Google or other tools. Kayla's blog is, I think, a 2nd grade classroom, so she's a primary teacher, but she shares a lot of projects that she does in her classroom. Alice Keeler and Jenny Magera are both great techie teachers out there. They create things for you to use, and they create tutorials and share great tech tips with you. And the last blog has everything tech, so it doesn't matter what grade you're with or what topic you're looking for. It has many things for all teachers. So I hope that answers a few of your questions. You can always contact me on Twitter at Mrs. Kultoff. Ask me any questions. I am going to send this Google presentation to your teacher as well, so these things are linked so you don't have to go in and try to type them, but you can click on them and access them. I hope this helps.